respected. If a man looks you in the eyes and says certain words that suddenly make you question your own instincts, do not ignore that feeling. Sometimes the biggest warning sign is not what he does when you are watching him, but what he says when he thinks you will believe anything just to keep the relationship alive. And today, I want you to listen carefully, because this is not about becoming suspicious of every man you love. It is about learning the difference between trust and blindness, between patience and self-betrayal, and between giving someone the benefit of the doubt and giving them permission to hurt you. There is one thing you have to understand before we go any further. A sentence by itself does not prove that a man is cheating. People can say innocent things for innocent reasons. But when certain words appear together with secrecy, emotional distance, unexplained changes, defensiveness, and behavior that no longer matches the relationship you thought you had, then you have a reason to pay attention. Because a woman who knows her worth does not panic at every little change. She observes, she listens, she watches patterns. She does not accuse without evidence, but she also does not silence her intuition just because the truth might hurt. Let me tell you about a woman named Maya. Maya had been with her boyfriend for almost 4 years. In the beginning, he was completely different. He called her just to hear her voice. He wanted to know how her day went. He remembered the little things. If she was tired, he noticed. If something was bothering her, he could see it before she even spoke. But slowly, something changed. At first, it was small. His phone started staying face down. Then he began taking calls in another room. Then his schedule became difficult to understand. And whenever Maya asked a simple question, instead of receiving a simple answer, she received an attitude. One evening, she finally asked him, "Is there something going on that you are not telling me?" He looked at her and said 6 words that made her heart drop. "You're just being too insecure again." 6 words. Now listen carefully. Those words do not automatically mean a man is cheating. But if a person constantly uses your insecurity to avoid answering reasonable questions, you need to stop asking yourself whether you are crazy and start asking yourself why you feel unsafe in the first place. There is a difference between insecurity and intuition. Insecurity says, "I am afraid he will leave me because I am not enough." Intuition says, "Something about his behavior has changed, and I need to understand why." Do not confuse the two. And this is where many people lose themselves in relationships. They become so afraid of being called jealous, dramatic, controlling, or insecure that they stop trusting their own observations. You ask a reasonable question, he becomes angry. You notice a change. He tells you that you are imagining things. You ask for clarity. He tells you that you have trust issues. And eventually, instead of discussing his behavior, the entire conversation becomes about what is supposedly wrong with you. That is a dangerous place to live, because manipulation does not always look like shouting. Sometimes manipulation sounds calm. Sometimes it sounds intelligent. Sometimes it sounds like you need to work on yourself. And yes, you should always work on yourself. But personal growth does not mean accepting behavior that makes you constantly question reality. There is another phrase you should watch carefully. "I don't have to explain myself to you." Again, understand the difference. A healthy relationship does not require 2 adults to report every second of their day. Nobody should be treated like a prisoner. Everyone deserves privacy and independence. But privacy and secrecy are not the same thing. Privacy says, "I have parts of my life that belong to me." Secrecy says, "I am actively hiding something from you because I know the truth could affect your decision to stay." That distinction matters. If a man suddenly becomes extremely protective of his phone, changes passwords without explanation, takes his phone everywhere, becomes nervous when you are near it, and then tells you that you are invading his privacy simply because you noticed the change, do not immediately accuse him of cheating, but do not ignore the pattern either. Watch what happens next. Does he become more transparent? Does he communicate? Does he reassure you through consistent behavior? Or does he become colder, more defensive, and more secretive? Because words can create confusion, but patterns reveal character. And there is another phrase that can be a major warning sign when it appears alongside other red flags. You're overthinking everything. And sometimes you are overthinking. We all do it. Sometimes your fear creates a story that reality has not confirmed. But if you repeatedly bring up the same concern because the circumstances keep changing, then maybe the problem is not that you are thinking too much. Maybe you are observing too much. There is a difference. Imagine a woman notices that her partner suddenly works late 3 nights every week, but he cannot explain where he has been. He becomes distant. He stops showing affection. He guards his phone. His stories do not line up. She asks, "What is happening?" He says, "You think too much." She asks again, "You are so insecure." She tries to explain how she feels. "You are becoming controlling." Now she is sitting alone wondering if she has become the problem. But what if the real problem is that she is receiving less honesty and more confusion? That is why you cannot judge a relationship by words alone. Watch consistency. Watch effort. Watch whether the person you love makes you feel emotionally safe or constantly makes you feel like you have to investigate your own relationship. And here is something I want you to remember. You do not need to become a detective to deserve the truth. You do not need to compete with another woman. You do not need to beg someone to choose you. And you certainly do not need to destroy your peace trying to prove that you are worthy of loyalty. If someone is cheating, the solution is not to become more beautiful, more available, more sexual, more agreeable, or more desperate. The solution is truth. Because betrayal is not proof that you were not enough. It is proof that someone made a choice. Never carry somebody else's decision like it is your identity. And if you discover that a man has been unfaithful, you have a decision to make. You can spend the rest of your life asking, what did she have that I didn't? Or you can stand tall and ask a better question. Why did I ever believe I had to compete for the love I deserve to receive honestly? That question changes everything, because your value is not determined by whether one man remains faithful. Your value existed before he met you. Your value remains if he leaves. And your value remains even if someone you trusted breaks your heart. So pay attention to the words, but pay even more attention to the behavior behind those words. If his words say everything is fine, but his actions tell a different story, do not rush into accusations. Slow down, observe, ask direct questions. Protect your peace. And most importantly, do not abandon yourself just to keep somebody else. Because the moment you learn that your peace is valuable, you stop begging people to give you the bare minimum. You start demanding honesty. You start respecting your intuition, and you begin to understand that love is not supposed to make you live in permanent confusion. There are more warning phrases we need to talk about, because sometimes the most revealing words are the ones a person uses when they are trying to create distance, hide their behavior, or make you feel guilty for asking completely reasonable questions. And when you recognize those patterns, you will stop reacting from fear and start responding from self-respect. Now let me take you deeper, because this is where many women make the mistake of listening only to what a man says instead of paying attention to what his words are trying to accomplish. A sentence can be innocent when it stands alone, But when that sentence appears beside secrecy, emotional distance, unexplained changes, and defensiveness, it can become part of a pattern. And one of the phrases you need to watch is this: why don't you trust me? Now, that question can come from a completely innocent man. A faithful man may genuinely feel hurt if his partner constantly doubts him, but there is something you need to understand. A healthy man who wants to protect the relationship will usually want to understand why your trust has changed. He will say, "What happened? What made you feel this way? Talk to me." A man who is trying to avoid accountability may turn the entire conversation back onto you. "Why don't you trust me?" Suddenly, you are defending yourself. Suddenly, you are explaining your feelings. Suddenly, you are apologizing for asking a question, and the original issue disappears. That is why you have to learn how to stay calm. Do not get pulled into an emotional argument. If you ask a question and he responds with another question designed to make you feel guilty, breathe. Stay calm. Say, "I am asking because something has changed and I want an honest conversation." Then stop talking. Let the silence work. Because when you stop filling every silence with explanations, people reveal themselves. A person who has nothing to hide may explain. A person who is hiding something may become defensive. And sometimes the defensiveness tells you more than the original answer. Another phrase to watch is this: "I told you everything already." That sentence sounds harmless, but pay attention to the circumstances. Did he actually answer your question, or did he give you a vague answer and become frustrated because you asked for details? There is a huge difference between repeating yourself and refusing to clarify something important. A relationship built on trust does not need constant interrogation, but trust also cannot survive on constant ambiguity. If his stories keep changing, if details keep disappearing, if explanations become shorter every time you ask, you are allowed to notice that. You are not required to pretend that confusion is normal. And this is where I want you to understand something about emotional maturity. Maturity is not believing everyone. Maturity is not doubting everyone either. Maturity is learning how to observe without immediately reacting. You do not have to scream. You do not have to threaten. You do not have to search through every device. You do not have to become someone you do not recognize. You simply have to watch. Watch whether his actions match his words. Watch whether his affection suddenly disappears. Watch whether he becomes emotionally unavailable. Watch whether he starts criticizing you more than before. Watch whether he suddenly finds reasons to spend less time with you while becoming unusually protective of his private life. One red flag may mean nothing. A pattern means something. And there is another sentence that can reveal emotional distance: "I just need some space." Now listen carefully. Sometimes people genuinely need space. Healthy relationships require independence. People need time to themselves. They need friendships, hobbies, work, family, and personal boundaries. So never assume that asking for space automatically means cheating. But ask yourself, what changed? Did he ask for healthy space while still communicating respectfully? Or did space suddenly become a way to disappear? Did he become unavailable for long periods? Did he stop making plans? Did he stop showing affection? Did he become irritated whenever you wanted connection? Because space should create breathing room. It should not create a secret life. And this is where self-respect becomes powerful. If somebody asks for space, you do not have to chase them. You can say, "I respect your need for space, but I also need clarity about what this relationship means." Then step back. Let his actions speak. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop trying to force an answer from someone who is committed to giving you confusion. There is another phrase that deserves your attention: "You deserve better than me." Now, this one is interesting. Sometimes a person says this because they genuinely struggle with self-worth. Sometimes they know they have been treating you badly. And sometimes it becomes a way of preparing you for their exit without telling you the real reason. If a man suddenly becomes emotionally distant and repeatedly tells you that you deserve better, do not immediately comfort him and say, "No, you're perfect." Instead, ask him what he means. What makes you say that? Then listen. Do not rush to rescue him from his own statement. If someone tells you that you deserve better, believe that they are communicating something. Maybe they are admitting they are not ready. Maybe they are admitting they are unhappy. Maybe they are carrying guilt, or maybe they are slowly creating emotional distance because their attention has moved somewhere else. You do not know until you ask, but you have every right to ask. And then comes one of the most painful phrases of all. "I don't know what I want." That sentence can destroy years of certainty in a few seconds, because when someone says they do not know what they want, you have to stop trying to convince them that they want you. That is where many people lose their dignity. They start negotiating for love. They say, "Tell me what I need to change. I can give you more space. I can be more understanding. I can stop asking questions. I can become whoever you need me to be." No, stop. Love should not require you to erase yourself. If someone is confused about what they want, allow them to be confused without making their confusion your responsibility. You cannot think clearly for another adult. You cannot force honesty into someone. You cannot love somebody into becoming faithful. And you cannot perform perfectly enough to prevent another person from making a bad decision. That is one of the hardest lessons in relationships. Sometimes people cheat not because their partner lacks something, but because they lack character, boundaries, discipline, or honesty. Never take responsibility for another person's lack of integrity. Now, there is something else I want you to understand. If you suspect cheating, do not immediately destroy your own peace trying to catch somebody. Do not spend every night checking their online status. Do not become obsessed with social media. Do not compare yourself with every woman who appears in his world, because the more you obsess over finding proof, the more your entire identity begins revolving around his behavior. And that's dangerous. Your life is bigger than this relationship. Your dreams are bigger. Your future is bigger. Your purpose is bigger. A relationship should be part of your life, not the entire reason you wake up. And if you discover something painful, you will need your strength. That strength comes from building a life that does not collapse when another person makes a disappointing choice. So while you are watching his behavior, watch your own behavior too. Are you abandoning your standards because you're afraid of losing him? Are you accepting disrespect because you're afraid of being alone? Are you making excuses for behavior that you would tell your best friend never to tolerate? Those questions matter, because sometimes the greatest red flag is not what someone else is doing. It is what you are allowing yourself to accept. You deserve a relationship where you can ask questions without being humiliated. You deserve communication without manipulation. You deserve affection without having to beg for it. You deserve loyalty without having to monitor someone. And you deserve peace. But remember, peace does not always mean staying. Sometimes peace means having the courage to leave. Sometimes peace means saying, "I love you, but I will not live like this." Sometimes peace means accepting that the person you wanted is not the person they chose to become. And that acceptance hurts, but it also sets you free. Because once you stop trying to control another person's choices, you regain control over your own. You cannot control whether somebody cheats. You cannot control whether they lie. You cannot control whether they leave, but you can control what you do when the truth becomes clear. You can choose dignity. You can choose boundaries. You can choose healing. And you can choose yourself. So remember these words, but don't become paranoid because of them. A sentence is not proof. A change in behavior is not automatically proof. But when words, actions, secrecy, and emotional distance begin forming a consistent pattern, do not ignore what you are seeing. Ask questions, stay calm, look for consistency, and never let fear convince you that you must accept confusion just to keep someone you love. Because the final lesson is the one that matters most. You should never have to lose yourself to keep someone else. And in part 3, we are going to talk about what to do when the red flags become undeniable, how to confront the situation without losing your dignity, and how to protect your heart, whether the truth is what you feared or something completely different. Now, this is where everything changes, because recognizing red flags is one thing, but knowing what to do when you see them is another. A lot of people can identify the problem, but they do not know how to respond to it. They panic, they accuse, they beg, they threaten to leave. Then they accept an apology without receiving clarity. And a few weeks later, the same cycle begins again. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where a man's words and actions are making you question the relationship, do not react from fear. Respond from self-respect. First, understand this. You do not have to catch someone in the act before you are allowed to acknowledge that something feels wrong. You are allowed to say, this relationship no longer feels healthy to me. You are allowed to say, I don't feel respected. You are allowed to say, I don't feel secure here. You are allowed to say, I need honesty. Those statements do not make you needy. They make you honest. And if you decide to confront him, do not walk into the conversation trying to prove that you are smarter than him. Do not prepare a courtroom speech. Do not list every woman you think he might be talking to. Do not scream every suspicion you have collected over the last 6 months. Instead, speak about what you know. Say, I've noticed that your behavior has changed. You're more secretive, more distant, and your explanations aren't consistent. I need you to be honest with me about what is happening. Then listen, really listen, not just to the words, listen to the tone, listen to whether he answers the question, listen to whether he takes responsibility, listen to whether he tries to understand your feelings, listen to whether he immediately attacks your character, because sometimes you can learn more from how somebody handles a difficult conversation than from the answer they give you. A man who genuinely wants to protect the relationship may say, I understand why you feel that way. Let me explain. A man who wants to manipulate the situation may say, you're crazy. You're insecure. You're impossible. You're always starting drama. Notice what happened there. The conversation moved from his behavior to your personality. That is something you should pay attention to. But again, do not label every disagreement as manipulation. People get defensive. People get frustrated. People communicate badly. The point is not to become suspicious of every imperfect reaction. The point is to look at the overall pattern. Does he eventually calm down and communicate? Does he make an effort to rebuild trust? Does his behavior become consistent, or does the same confusion continue? Because trust is not rebuilt by promises. Trust is rebuilt by repeated behavior. If someone says, I will never do that again, that is only a sentence. What matters is what happens tomorrow, and the day after that, and the week after that, and the month after that. Character is revealed through consistency. Now let me tell you something that may hurt, but it can also set you free. If you have to constantly investigate someone's loyalty, you are already living in a relationship where trust has been damaged. Whether he is cheating or not, something needs to change, because love without trust becomes emotional exhaustion. You start checking, you start wondering, you start analyzing, you start reading into every message, you start watching the clock, you start wondering who he is talking to, and slowly you stop living your own life. You become a prisoner of possibilities. That's not love, that's fear. And you were not created to live your life in fear. You were created to grow, to dream, to build, to become, to laugh, to experience life, and to love somebody who adds peace to your world rather than making you constantly question your worth. So if the truth comes out and you discover that he cheated, let me tell you something very important. Do not immediately ask, what did I do wrong? Ask, what does this reveal about the person I trusted? Those are two completely different questions. The first question blames you. The second question helps you understand reality. Maybe you made mistakes in the relationship. Of course you did. Everybody does. Maybe you could have communicated better. Maybe you could have been more attentive. Maybe there were things you needed to improve. But none of those things give another person permission to betray you. A mature person communicates. A mature person sets boundaries. A mature person leaves if the relationship is no longer right. Cheating is a choice, and you do not have to carry the shame of somebody else's choice. You also do not have to compete with the other person. Don't waste your life trying to prove that you are prettier. Don't obsess over her pictures. Don't ask what she had that you didn't. Don't destroy your confidence trying to understand why he chose somebody else. Because sometimes a person who was betrayed spends more time studying the other woman than studying the man who betrayed her. That's backwards. The important question is not, why was she attractive? The important question is, why did he choose dishonesty? And if he cheated, remember this: you did not lose your value, you lost an illusion. You lost a version of him you believed existed. And yes, that can hurt more than losing the relationship itself. Because you are not only grieving a person, you are grieving the future you imagined. The vacations you imagined, the family you imagined, the mornings you imagined, the promises you believed. That is why healing takes time. Do not shame yourself for still caring. Do not shame yourself because you miss him. Do not shame yourself because part of you still wishes things could have been different. Healing does not mean you stop caring overnight. Healing means you stop allowing your pain to make decisions for you. And there is another lesson you need to hear. Forgiveness does not automatically mean reconciliation. You can forgive someone and still walk away. You can understand why somebody hurt you without giving them another opportunity to hurt you. You can love someone and still choose distance. You can wish them well and still close the door. That is strength. Strength is not screaming, I don't need anybody. Strength is saying, I love deeply, but I will not abandon myself. And if you choose to stay after betrayal, then staying must come with conditions: honesty, transparency, accountability, consistency, real change, not just tears, not just promises, not just, I'm sorry, real change. Because an apology without changed behavior is simply a pause before the next injury. And if you choose to leave, do not let loneliness convince you that you made the wrong decision. Loneliness is temporary. Losing yourself can last much longer. There will be nights when you miss him. There will be mornings when you reach for your phone. There will be moments when you remember his voice and wonder whether you should call. Don't romanticize the pain. Remember the whole story. Remember how you felt when you were confused. Remember the nights you cried. Remember how small you felt when your questions were dismissed. Remember the version of yourself you became while trying to hold together something that was falling apart. Then ask yourself one simple question. Do I want to go back to the person I was, Or do I want to become the woman I was supposed to be? That question can change your life, because sometimes the heartbreak you are trying so desperately to escape is actually the doorway to your next level. You begin exercising again. You begin sleeping peacefully. You begin spending time with people who genuinely love you. You begin working on your goals. You begin rebuilding your confidence. You begin realizing that your future was never dependent on one relationship. And one day you look back and realize something. You survived the thing you thought would destroy you. And that is when your story changes. Not when he comes back. Not when he apologizes. Not when he realizes what he lost. Your story changes when you realize you are still standing. That is the victory. So if a man says those words, don't automatically label him a cheater. Don't live in paranoia. Don't accuse without reason. But don't ignore patterns either. Watch the behavior. Ask direct questions. Trust consistency. Protect your boundaries. And never confuse love with tolerance for disrespect. Because a healthy relationship should not require you to become a detective. It should allow you to become yourself. You deserve a love where honesty is normal, where communication is safe, where loyalty is not something you have to beg for, where you can sleep peacefully at night because you are not constantly wondering where you stand. And if someone cannot give you that, you have to be brave enough to accept the truth. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is not holding on tighter. Sometimes it is opening your hand, letting go, and saying, I would rather face the pain of losing you than live with the pain of losing myself. That is where your power begins, and that is where your healing begins. Respect it. Before you walk away from this message, I want you to remember one thing. Never let the fear of losing someone become so powerful that you become willing to lose yourself. If his words made you question something, don't immediately panic. Don't accuse without evidence. Don't turn your relationship into an investigation. But don't ignore your instincts either. Pay attention to patterns. Pay attention to consistency. Pay attention to how he responds when you ask for honesty, because love is not supposed to leave you constantly confused about where you stand. And if you discover that he has betrayed you, remember this. His decision does not define your worth. You are not less beautiful. You are not less valuable. You are not less deserving of love. You simply trusted someone who made a choice that hurt you. And yes, that pain is real. Cry if you need to cry. Grieve what you thought you had. Take your time, but don't build a permanent home inside a temporary heartbreak. One day, you will wake up and realize you don't need to check his phone. You don't need to wonder where he is. You don't need to compare yourself to another woman. You don't need to ask why he changed. You don't need his apology to validate your pain. You will finally understand that closure does not always come from the person who hurt you. Sometimes closure comes from accepting the truth and choosing yourself anyway. So stand up, protect your peace, raise your standards, love deeply, but never love so deeply that you abandon your own dignity, because the right person will not make you beg for honesty. The right person will not punish you for asking reasonable questions. The right person will not make you feel like you have to compete for their attention. The right person will understand that trust is precious, and they will protect it. And if somebody walks away because you finally demanded honesty, let them walk. You didn't lose the love of your life. You lost someone who was unwilling to give you the kind of love you deserved. There is a difference. Never chase someone who makes you question your worth. Never beg someone to choose you. Never compete for a place that should have been yours through commitment. And never forget that being alone is better than being loved dishonestly. Your future is still waiting for you. Your confidence can come back. Your peace can come back. Your smile can come back. Your life can become beautiful again, maybe even more beautiful than before. So don't let betrayal turn your heart cold. Let it make you wiser. Don't let heartbreak make you bitter. Let it make you stronger. Don't let someone else's dishonesty convince you that love does not exist. Let it teach you that next time you will choose a love that comes with honesty, consistency, respect, and peace. And when you finally reach that place, you will look back at the person who broke your heart and realize something powerful. They didn't destroy you. They introduced you to a version of yourself that you had not yet met. A stronger version, a wiser version, a woman who knows what she will never tolerate again. So remember this. You can love somebody and still leave. You can forgive somebody and still protect yourself. You can miss somebody and still know they are not good for you. And you can lose a relationship without losing yourself. That is the real victory. Because at the end of the day, the greatest relationship you will ever have is the one you build with yourself. Protect it, respect it, and never abandon it for somebody who cannot recognize its value. Your heart deserves peace. Your mind deserves clarity. Your life deserves honesty. And you deserve a love that never makes you question whether you are enough. Stand tall. Keep moving. And remember, sometimes losing the wrong person is how you finally make room for the right life.